Jeremy Hunt's appearance at the Thirlwell inquiry is a reason for both reflection and controversy. As the former Health Secretary, Hunt has now apologised to the families of Lucy Letby's victims, acknowledging the ultimate authority or responsibility that he bore for the NHS at the time of her crimes. And he's right. One shouldn't forget the victims and one should be mindful of their suffering. His words, "This terrible tragedy happened on my watch," carry a weight of accountability, but they also invite scrutiny, because he goes on to say that he wasn't entirely responsible. Hunt's apology in principle is commendable, but it comes with the pointed criticism of delays in reform, and he argues that the introduction of medical examiners, first recommended in 2004 after the Harold Shipman inquiry and later reinforced by Sir Robert Francis in 2013, could have joined the dots sooner, and these examiners, he suggested, might have identified patterns of malicious harm in healthcare professionals like Letby. However, funding for these reforms was stalled, and Hunt subtly shifts the blame to the Treasury. And it wasn't until 2023, during his tenure as Chancellor, that he claims to have pushed it through. This is duplicitous. So he's saying he takes accountability, and then he says it's somebody else's fault. And then he says, oh, and now it wouldn't happen at all because I pushed through these reforms. These reforms were not necessarily going to be efficacious on their own. It's quite right that we should be mindful of the victims as well as the questions surrounding the incarceration of Letby herself. But it's highly questionable whether these reforms, if they had been allowed, then the Lucy Letby tragedy would not have happened. That's highly questionable and a little bit far-fetched. It raises important questions. Would medical examiners have unequivocally prevented Letby's crimes? No, they wouldn't. The system's efficiency depends on adequate training, resources and authority. And Hunt's vision of examiners identifying malicious actors like Letby or Shipman is a tall order. So if they are there, and if they are effective, then maybe there is a chance that the Letby situation would not have occurred. But that would assume that these inspectors these examiners are effective, are efficacious. And it's worth considering whether such a system could have operated effectively in the overstretched and underfunded NHS in the mid-2010s. I don't think so. I think this is all about Jeremy Hunt. It's not about Lucy Letby, and it's not about the victims. It's about the reputation of Hunt. And the inquiry exposes deeper failings in the system. The culture of the NHS, particularly the Countess of Chester Hospital, appears to have stifled whistleblowers and ignored early warning signs. So how would it have listened to official examiners? Hunt's claim that lessons were not learned from previous inquiries speaks to a recurring issue: the NHS's tendency to respond to crises with reports and recommendations that fail to translate into actionable change. Blaming Treasury inertia cannot excuse the lack of internal vigilance or support for staff raising concerns. And you only raise concerns in the NHS when you realise that there's a real problem that can or should be fixed. And by that point, it's often too late, as I found out myself. While we focus on the failings of the system, we shouldn't lose sight of the victims. 7 babies were murdered, 7 more attacked, countless lives shattered, and their families deserve justice and accountability and care. But the questions surrounding Letby's conviction persist and overtake all other issues. Sir David Davis and others have called for the retrial, citing concerns over the reliability of the prosecution's medical expert and the statistical evidence presented. And if there's even a shadow of doubt, this inquiry must also examine the robustness of Letby's trial. Hunt's testimony is a stark reminder of the human cost of bureaucratic delay and the inertia of the NHS systems. And while medical examiners may improve scrutiny, they are not a panacea. Preventing another Letby crisis requires more than implementing recommendations. It demands cultural reform. It demands prioritising patient safety, patient care, empowering the NHS staff to act decisively when warning signs emerge. It's actually in their contract already now. But this overwhelming urge to whitewash the system and the overwhelming obsession with management in the NHS is what stifles serious and sustained progress and improvements. We need to make it very clear. The people who get paid the most are the people who are going to effect the changes. That is, the doctors, the nurses, the cleaners. The people who are completely unnecessary, who are at the moment paid more than anybody else, that is the CEOs and the managers and the pen pushers, need to be paid what they're worth, which is a basic wage, a living wage. We need to get it into perspective. The people who are putting the knife into patients are the people who should be paid the most. Full stop. And the people who are making decisions who countermand the decisions of the medical practitioners. On what basis? On the basis of cost. Well, if there's a problem with cost, then you start reducing the salaries of the people who are making those decisions. It's very simple. I don't understand how we can have inflated salaries for management and bureaucrats in the NHS and see doctors scurrying around exhausted on double shifts and minimum pay, and our lives are in their hands. This is our fault, our problem, and the solution is staring at us in the face. And it's only stupidity that pays these clerks so much money for pushing a pen around a bit of paper.